about rebound stories. Like 3 weeks ago, I did a whole contact tracing report. It wasn't a rebound thing. We launched this new franchise about helping businesses and reporting on medical advancements that are getting people back to a new life and getting them back to normal. But I did a contact tracing story out of Singapore that they had the whole app with Bluetooth that they've been using for almost 4 weeks now. And we still, our tech companies, we have Google, we have Facebook, we have all the major tech companies, Apple, that haven't developed a contact tracing app to launch out nationally. The state health departments haven't done one. We've talked about it, and they've been doing the disease detectives going out in the community and then tracking who you may have interacted with that got a positive COVID-19. But we really haven't gotten the technology there to track it so that we can all sort of download this app, know that our privacy is fine, but know that it's for the greater good of health. And that's been really surprising to me, just reading all of this stuff about how far behind we are in contact tracing and testing.
And we need to catch up too, because you had Dr. Fauci, the top infectious disease doctor in the country, weigh in on how that is going to be so crucial, is contact tracing as you start to reopen this, because that determines who you need to isolate after we get more people out and about working, right, going into, all kinds of retail shops and things like that. It's crucial. So we better pick up I think you're right. We need to pick it up, and quickly.
Yeah. And I got the text from Hillsborough County and from the city of Tampa saying, hey, you don't have to have those symptoms or the CDC guidelines. If you want to get a test, you can get a test now. So you can call the number, you can make an appointment. You don't have to have, a connection with someone that had a positive case. You don't have to have a travel history. So anybody in Hillsborough, they're trying to get everybody tested, which is phenomenal.
Oh, it's absolutely phenomenal. You've done a lot of work here on human interest stories, focusing, getting people jobs, getting them back into work some way, somehow. Let's delve into that a little bit. What are some of the things that you're most proud of you've been able to uncover here?
Well, I went out and I interviewed a couple of welders a couple of days ago, and they are looking at a shortage just before COVID-19 of 500,000, so about 500,000 welders, like skilled welders, will be needed over the next 10 years. There's always a shortage of welders, but they've been working through this whole thing, putting food on the table, and there's trade schools where you can do the welding and you can learn the apprenticeships through some of the unions. But they were so passionate about what they're doing, and they said, hey, the one guy I interviewed, the story's going to air in a couple of days, maybe next week. He said he was going to school to be an elementary school teacher, and then he decided he wanted to work with his hands and do a trade, and he just didn't want to think about going into debt from college. So I think we have to rethink as a society, like, where we're going to make our money, where we're going to go into debt. Are we going to, spend $3 or $4 to go learn a trade, or are we going to spend $30,000 a year to get an MBA or whatever? So I think there's a lot of options, but it's really inspiring. At least the welder I interviewed, his story, because he said he feels so fulfilled that he makes everything every day with his hands. He's not in any debt, and he's contributing. I think he's doing like fuel pipelines and stuff.
So wonderful.
So it's just different. But those are the inspiring stories. So people we don't normally talk to that are just out there every day, just making a living for their families, and they're learning a skill, and they're bettering their lives, and they're actually making their own lives richer because they're doing something good. So that's kind of impressive.
I'm so surprised you said welders. You said there's always a need for welders. That is not, if you would have put me up against the wall and said, name me a job we're always going to need, or it's always in need, I would not have said that. This is all focused on a rebound. So we want to get to as much positivity as possible. It's kind of amazing how I look at restaurants in particular, how a lot of them have had to completely change their business model to try and survive during this, whether or not they got the help from the federal government. I mean, restaurants went as far as delivering happy hour to people just to try and stay afloat. Is it enough? Well, time will tell on that one. Anything else pique your interest as far as businesses you've seen? Also we can talk about the businesses that have changed their manufacturing plans to start manufacturing PPEs. That's been a very impressive thing. Anything that's kind of struck a chord with you where you've seen the companies throw everything out the window and say, okay, we can do this, we can help, and we can still make some money for ourselves?
Yeah, so I interviewed the owner of Blind Tiger Cafe, and he's in Ybor City. He has multiple locations, but the main one, Blind Tiger Coffee. He owns Cass Street Deli too. So he rearranged, since they were closed down, the coffee shop. He completely upgraded it. He kept his employees working because they helped with the remodel. He said, they're in the heart of Ybor City, so they don't get the cruise traffic. They don't get the tourist foot traffic coming in. They don't get regular business people who are taking a break during, office hours to come in. But he teamed up with a national chef, and he stayed open in his coffee shop, rearranged it, made sure all the tables when they do reopen are 6 feet apart, so he can already do social distancing. So he's preparing for that, which was smart. And then he teamed up with a chef for his deli, and they're doing a federal program where they're feeding restaurant workers every day for the next 3 weeks. And it's through Maker's Mark initiative and a Kentucky chef that did it. So he's not only running his coffee shop, but he's feeding people in the community in need because he got a grant. So then he's keeping his chef at Cass Street Deli employed. So he's wearing all these hats, and he's like, I didn't know what to do, so I just started doing whatever I could do. So it wasn't even an option for him to fail. One guy told me that he was going to, use whatever he had in his mortgage, and he'd get a reverse mortgage, and he would pay his employees out of whatever value he had in his home to keep them employed to ride out the storm. So there's a lot of people that are the business owners, that are small business owners, that have a little bit of capital that they were saving for their retirement that they're willing to pull from and then keep their employees afloat. And that to me has been incredible. Because, it's not, your 401k didn't take a huge hit in the past 2 months.
I know exactly. Well, I mean, do you think as much as that is probably out of the goodness of people's hearts, do you think that's also because they know that this is a great time to get some good publicity, and word of mouth oftentimes is your best advertiser in any time, especially a time of crisis? Do you think that's part of it too?
Yeah, I think it's I was thinking that the other day because we don't really do stories on like just small businesses that are running a business because that's just what they did.
Exactly.
We'd always have to find a news peg. Like we wouldn't just go out and interview a hamburger shop because they had 10 people employed. But the whole script has flipped where now we're interviewing small businesses because they're the story. More than 30 million Americans filing for unemployment in the last 6 weeks. They're the story. And then you interview them during this time and you realize, okay, well, they are getting publicity. And that always feels like, we're not commercial, we're news. We want to tell the story, not in a way that we're like being a commercial entity for them and promoting just a bunch of random businesses like sales. We're not sales, I think is what I'm trying to say.
We're not, but when it's something a viewer that can benefit a viewer and something they can use, then it absolutely has a place in a newscast.
And when I interview someone that comes across as so genuine, where that they're not trying to exploit the fact that they're, doing these good things, it's definitely from the heart. So that's what's been amazing to see. I haven't seen anyone think, oh, I got to get publicity out of this. They're so excited to tell their story because they just want to help.
Yeah, I was really playing devil's advocate because that's exactly what I've seen. As a matter of fact, when all
I don't trust anybody. So, I'm a news reporter. So, I always go in thinking that this guy's just trying to, get free publicity. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. You have experience in that, more so than me. I was going to say, when this all started, I was trying to reach out to everybody that I knew that either owned a business or ran a nonprofit or whatever else. And my big pitch was, well, I'm trying to turn content for our morning show, and I'm looking at whatever is going to be useful for people watching, something that can help them. Or if there's nonprofits that are in need, is there something they need that people can provide them? So my big pitch was, what do you guys need right now? Particularly with the nonprofits. And I swear, 80% of the time, of all the ones I called, it wasn't about what we need, it's about what we're doing for people during this time. So, Dee and I say it all the time, but really, in the worst of times, it brings out the best of people more often than not. You just see it time and time again.
Yeah, and like I interviewed a military veteran who runs a PR firm, and he changed this whole thing where he's now doing news style stories promoting businesses that have changed and then giving people creative ideas to change. And he had the military attitude, which you just, you're getting shot at, you don't just hide, you got to fight back. So, I mean, he definitely had a different perspective. But then I interviewed a martial arts instructor yesterday, and she's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm teaching these kids about integrity and about, developing their confidence. And we can't just let the virus ruin us. So she said, yeah, we've taken a big hit, but we just kept working. And they're going to survive. They've been in business 8 years. They'll be in business another 8, 20, 30 years. It's that attitude, too, So that's been coming across a lot. It is.
I know you don't have a crystal ball, Mike, but before I let you go, how do you see this unfolding? What do you feel good about, and what do you not feel so great about?
Well, the numbers scare me about the number of unemployed. And what scares me is the fact that all of those folks are going to have to try to come back at a lower capacity, like 25% in restaurants or 50%. It's going to take a long time. So it scares me about if there's a second wave of the virus, if we have to sort of reclose things and sort of fall back. But I'm also optimistic in that once people start going back to work, if the virus subsides and people aren't getting sick and we're not losing lives, I feel like it'll turn on like a faucet. And once it turns back on, the economy's going to restart and we're just going to keep going. So that's the optimist in me. So there's those two you're balancing, like the unknown of this virus that just came out of nowhere in March and just ruined so many lives. And then there's the optimist saying, all right, well, once the water is back on, it's going to flow and you're going to be back to normal. So I'm hoping that's what happens.
That's perfect. Paul made an interesting point to me. So I had Paul Agrone on the pod last week, and he made an interesting point to me about how, sooner or later, people are just going to have to go out into the unknown and face the kind of things that they've been quarantined and forced to avoid for so long. Do you see a similar situation too, where people, so long we've been told you have to distance, you can't go here, you can't do this, you can't do that. You just have to kind of step up and go out into the unknown and continue your life. We're going to get to that point.
Yeah. And I was talking to my wife about it. And I told her I had to go to work the other day because, I'll probably shoot all day, like 7 or 8 hours, like shoot 3 stories and then have a writing day or have 2 writing days in a row. So there was a weekend where I'd shot everything on like a Friday and then I had Saturday, Sunday off and then Monday a writing day. I had to go to work on like the 4th day. I hadn't driven to work because I'd been working from home and I was like nervous to go outside. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like you're like, it gives you that feeling where it's almost like you look out into the beauty of Florida and there's this fog and it's the fog of the virus because you don't know where it is. So when you get enveloped in it, it's just ever present everywhere, which is nuts.
You're going to be bouncing your grandkid on your knee someday. What do you tell him about this? What do you tell him about this time in our lives?
I got a 4-month-old daughter on my porch I'm looking at right now. And she'll be 5 months old next week.
Okay.
And yeah, and I look at her and I'm just like, Parker, you're living in this, you don't know, what happened. If you look back and ask them, be like, yeah, mom and dad, we just hung out at home for three months or a year and the whole world closed. It's weird to think that in 3 years, she won't know the world we knew as kids growing up. I think we just, she'll see people at a store with masks on and she'll think it's normal. Us, we're still getting used to it. So the world we leave for Parker, for my daughter, and for grandkids is one where we just have to be hygienic, wash our hands, stay safe, so keep social distancing, get, investing into more vaccines, medical technologies, and then just try to be able to use our brains as a society to fight.
Yeah, look,